Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Redondo Beach Unified School District School Board Forum, hosted by the League of Women Voters and of the Beach Cities and the Redondo Beach Council PTA. My name is Kimberly Kiwis, and I'm the Council President. The Redondo Beach Council PTA supports all 11 schools within our school district, 8 elementary, 2 middle school, and the finest high school in the South Bay. PTA is the nation's largest volunteer-based child advocacy association working to drive improvements in education, health, and the well-being for all children and families, which brings us to the reason for this evening's forum. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you this webinar is being recorded. After the event, we'll send you an email with all the information on how and where to access the recording. And now I'd like to introduce our moderator, Barbara Arlo, Voter Service Chair for the League of Women Voters of the Beach Cities. Take it away, Barbara.
Good evening, everybody. The League was organized in 1920 when women first gained the right to vote. It is a grassroots organization. All persons 16 years or older are welcome. The League does not endorse, support, or oppose candidates or political parties. I'm going to introduce the candidates. They will be in alphabetical order. Keith Arnold, Jerome Chang, Karen Ford Cull, Dan Elder, Kimberly Isaacs, Rachel Silverman Nemeth, Rolf Curtis Strutzenberg, Margot Trone. And I'll now describe the format for tonight. The candidates will each have 1 minute to make an opening statement. The questions were submitted in advance. I will read the written questions for the candidates, and the candidates have 1 minute to answer. Each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. Closing statements will be made in the reverse order of the opening statements. The timekeeper will indicate when the time has elapsed. Candidates are expected to promptly relinquish the floor. The candidates have agreed to confine their presentations to issues. They have agreed to focus on their personal qualifications and their positions. And we're going to start with the opening statements, and we're going to start with Keith Arnold. Mr. Arnold?
Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you. Thanks for putting the event on. I'm excited and a little bit nervous to do this. Candidly, I have never run for a public office. My political ambitions ended in junior high when I lost school board or student council. So why I'm running is fairly simple. The last year has been the most frustrating, anger-filled year of my life, and I think many of our lives. It's been frustrating to wonder what I can do to help, what I can do to, get this thing back on the rails and get our kids back in school. And this was the solution I came up with. So with me, you'll get a candidate who is not running with any campaign funds. I have no campaign team. I have no campaign signs that are placed legally or illegally in the streets. I'm coming at this with a common sense approach. And as a father of 2 kids, I have a daughter in 1st grade who is desperate to get back into the classroom, but can't right now because there's a backlog of COVID tests. I have a son who's going to be in the Redondo Beach School District and was supposed to be this year, but that's been cut short when CDC did not open. And I'm here just to try to make things better and get our kids and students and school and staff safely back in session and bring a new version of this school district in the post-COVID era. So thank you for the time and my support.
Thank you. Jerome Chang. Mr. Chang?
My video has been disabled, so someone has to let me in. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jerome Chang, and I'm an independent candidate who doesn't have any prior ties to any group, and hopefully will be able to bring a objective and refreshing viewpoint to all things related to the school board. I'm a former educator, and my wife is in her 20th year teaching middle school in Torrance. I'm also an architect and a small business owner who operates a series of co-working spaces around Los Angeles. Co-working is a community of entrepreneurs and freelancers who share office space in order to collaborate. The key here is collaboration. I have 2 young children who attend Toledo, and whether I'm here for a single 4-year term or 2 4-year terms, I'm committed long-term. I believe the school board has the most unique role in our community, if we want it to be. You see, a school board member represents the entire district, whereas a city council person represents primarily one district. I will collaborate with the community, the greater community beyond just our
Thank you.
schools, to promote our local small business.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Karen Ford Cole. Ms. Cole?
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to the PTA for hosting this wonderful forum. A great school system is important to our whole community. Whether or not you have children or grandchildren in the district, we are all blessed to have excellent public schools in Redondo Beach, even now during the pandemic. I'm running because I want the features that make Redondo schools excellent to be available to every student on every campus. My passion for education and my whole life has prepared me to be a board member. I'm well educated, I have a PhD. I was an educator and I was trained in teaching and learning. I have a long history of leadership in the district, first of all as hands-on art chair, and then as the PTA president at Alta Vista. In every organization, I've worked to increase inclusion and cultural competence and encourage wider participation. My vision for Redondo is to continue to be a leader in an inclusive district.
Thank you. Mr. Elder, Dan Elder?
Thank you. I'd also like to thank RBPTA and the League of Women Voters. This is a fantastic opportunity for us to be able to get to answer questions and for voters to get to know us. Thank you for everyone taking your time tonight also to learn more about us. I think that's really important. Like so much else right now, education is facing unprecedented challenges. This pandemic has really turned everything upside down on us. And I think now more than ever, it's imperative that we have experienced leaders who know how to navigate some of the complex issues we're facing both today and tomorrow. I think we've all seen that elections have consequences, and it's incredibly important that we choose the right leaders to represent us. I'm running because I was asked to serve by leaders in the educational community. This is, something I was not aiming for, but it's something where you volunteer and you keep volunteering, and people recognize that and see what you're capable of, and that's what kind of pushed me into this. I think my track record reflects that I've made a commitment to fair and pragmatic solutions, from finding balance among conflicting priorities. And as a parent of 3rd and 6th graders in RBUSD, I really want to make sure I'm doing everything I can to make sure all of our children are thriving. Thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly Isaacs, Ms. Isaacs?
Hi, my name is Kim Isaacs, and I would like to thank the PTA and the League of Women Voters as well for having this amazing event for us to be seen to the public, because you may have seen our signs everywhere, but nobody's gotten to know us individually. I'm a mom, I'm a social justice activist, and I have 30 years of accounting experience. In addition, I'm also a member of the RBUSD Race and Equity Committee. I think it's very important that one of the things that we work on as we go going forward, we have an excellent school district, first of all. I moved here 2 years ago for my son, and so that he could go to the high school. So I'm already been convinced by my child's experience and by everything I've observed the past couple of years at the school. The one thing that I think that we need to work on is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so my goal as a school board member is to work on the safety of our students, the excellence, and also equity for all.
Thank you. Ms. Rachel Silverman Nemeth. Ms. Nemeth?
And I was on mute that whole time.
So would you start again, please?
Yes, thank you. That's not unusual for me, I will tell you all. But I'm Rachel Silverman Nemeth. I've lived in Redondo Beach for the past 21 years. I have 2 kids. My daughter Hannah graduated from Redondo Union last year and is at Northwestern now. And my son Will is a junior at RUHS. I have 2 nieces who are in 2nd and 4th grades at Lincoln. My educational background is in psychology and child development, and I have been a family law attorney for the past 25 years and dealing with a lot of issues regarding families and children. I think that my experiences give me a unique perspective, and I would look forward to helping with the school district as we move forward. And I see my strengths as being a problem solver and someone who's able to work well with other people, and look forward to helping the children, the students, and the educators.
Thank you. Rolf Curtis Strutzenberg, Mr. Strutzenberg.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us. My name is Rolf Curtis Strutzenberg. I have a 3rd grade son at Toledo, and our younger son will be in kindergarten next year. And my wife is a teacher. There'll be a lot of Q&A tonight about what will we do or plan to do if elected. I'm going to start off with an example of what I'm doing already. I had a long conversation this morning with the senior health deputy for the Office of County Supervisor, Janice Hahn. We started working out a framework of how we can get Redondo teachers and staff vaccinated much sooner. And our county supervisor's office is fully on board with working together on this. We have to be leaders rather than followers, or worse yet, we don't want to be just wait and seers. The county absolutely wants us to communicate and give our input to be part of the solution. My position is to make RBUSD the example that everyone else is looking at and asking, how did they do that? So I am already working on our future, not just waiting to see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Margot Trone, Ms. Trone.
Hi, thank you everyone who's had a hand in putting this together. I know it's a lot of work and we appreciate it. I'm a mom of 3 in Redondo, and I've been living in Redondo since 2005. I'm running for school board because I'm passionate about education and I believe in advocating for parents' voice. I have 3 priorities: safe return to school, identifying learning loss, and mental and emotional social support for our kiddos. I'm an advocate at heart. I collaborated for hybrid options for not ready to return to school so we can keep our teachers. I founded a dual immersion foundation. I belong to South Bay Equity Project and Washington Diversity and Equity, which is in line with the district's Race and Equity Committee. I worked for LAUSD for 10 years in procurement and risk management. I volunteered with PTA since 2014, and I'm a very well-rounded candidate. I've been endorsed by city leaders, educators, and community groups. And I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you, Ms. Trone. Okay, now we're going to start with the questions. The questions were submitted in advance. I will read the written questions for the candidates, and the candidates will have 1 minute to answer. Each candidate, I'm sorry, that's correct. And we're going to start with the second candidate. And so the first question is, what do you envision as the role of a Redondo RBUSD board member? And we're starting with Mr. Chang.
Hi, I perceive the board as more of a set of advisors as opposed to directors who direct the professionals to run the school. And so in that way, I want to be the sounding board and appoint a source of advice for the superintendent, the teachers, and everyone in between. Of course, when it's appropriate to intervene, to get more into the details and in the trenches, absolutely, I want to do that. But first and foremost, the teachers and the administrators are the professionals, and they should be running the school. So as the board of advisors, I look forward to helping guide the school.
Thank you. Ms. Ford Cole.
Thank you. A board member's role is to represent the residents of Redondo Beach, not just students and parents, but all the taxpayers and property owners and the whole community, everybody who can vote. Our job is to oversee the management of the schools on your behalf. And the biggest responsibility in that is to be responsible about how the district spends the public's money. Secondly, the board is responsible as an employer and as a contractor when we make agreements with providers and businesses. We have to be responsive to the community, to your values, your beliefs, and your priorities. And we have to use that to set the direction for the staff who do the day-to-day running of the schools. That means we have to hold open meetings and we have to listen to the community and make many opportunities for the community to speak to us so that we can listen. To me, one of those.
Thank you, Mr. Elder.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so essentially, any elected official is serving as a proxy for your choices. So whoever you elect, you're electing to make decisions on your behalf that hopefully reflect the decisions as you would have made them if you had the same information. So that's really the role of a board member, to make decisions on your behalf as a voter the way you would probably make them yourself. So I'm there to, or the board members are there to represent the voters of Redondo Beach and all things related to the school district. And it's really working with staff and teachers and students and parents and the entire community to really give the best educational experience possible for our children. So we're really there to make sure children are thriving in Redondo schools. That's the job of the Board of Education, is to be that additional outlet. That's where all the decisions are made, essentially. And it's important to focus on the issues of today as a board, but it's also really important to plan for the future. We can't just allocate all the resources we have to solving the problems of today if that means we're stripping them from the future. So it's very important to be responsible with the decisions that are made, because you have to keep an eye towards what's coming next and be prepared for whatever might happen. Some things you can predict, some things like a global pandemic you can't, but you have to try and balance things so that you're ready for those and have things like rainy day safety funds and things like that.
Thank you. Ms. Isaacs.
I think that the role of the school board is to basically oversee the entire district. I think the role is to make decisions that are, especially in light of the pandemic, is to make sure that the schools are running smoothly, to make sure that everything is within budget, making sure that our resources are allocated appropriately. They are to make sure that the schools are clean and they have all of the desks and chairs and supplies that are needed. No teacher should have to go out and purchase their own supplies. So we need to make sure that we are continuing the excellence that we are known for. And so the school board, our goal is to go around to activities and make sure that the school, again, is representing the community the way that it has been in the past. Any challenges that come up, like this pandemic, which no one really knew how to handle it because it was a brand new disease.
Thank you. Ms. Silverman Nemeth.
Hi, I think I got myself unmuted this time.
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. So the technical answer to this and the role of a school board member is to support the superintendent, Stephen Keller, and to maintain control over his responsibilities, and also to manage financial issues and budgeting. With that said, I also think a school board member should be a role model in the community and should have an open door policy to expect and welcome children, teachers, parents, administrators, and everyone to at least share ideas and talk about issues that might be going on. And above all, I think a school board member advocates for children and for the kids of our.
Thank you, Mr. Strutzenberg.
We have to be the visionaries, whether it's being 2 steps ahead or 2 weeks ahead or 2 years or 20 years ahead. We've got to be looking to the future and what's coming. And we've got to listen to our teachers of what they're seeing and how they see it evolving, how the kids are changing over time, what things are staying the same, what do we need to evolve with globally in our workforce for, we're preparing these kids for a future and to get them out and to be productive members of our society. And that means looking ahead. We can't just sit back and the routine decisions are going to be there. That's fine. But we've got to be thinking beyond that and really open up our hearts and minds to listen and to get a feeling for what's coming and do our absolute best to collaborate and bring our minds together and say, what's our path forward for our district and our kids? We want them to have the best possible that we can give them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trone.
Hi, it's my thought that the board members are there to help develop the vision and the goals for the district. And in doing that, reflecting the community and the community goals and the diverse community that we have. It's important for the board members to understand budgets and finance, because given the current situation, we're going to have to make some very difficult decisions. And so we need individuals who have that ability and capability and knowledge. We also want to ensure that we have a proper balance in our district with the right candidates and individuals, so that we can be open-minded and bring forth new perspectives to our district and to provide those educational opportunities to our children. I believe that we all need to collaborate together. We're a community, and the board has to reflect the community's voice in what. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arnold.
I think the board's job is to advise, it's to advocate, and it's to lead. If I look at this year and have a frustration, is that at the beginning of this pandemic, Dr. Keller sent out a really passionate email that struck me about doing the best for Redondo Beach, and making decisions for Redondo Beach. Yet here we are, 11 months later, and we have no say in the decisions for our school. We're waiting on the public health. We're waiting on LA County. We all live here. We don't live in Los Angeles, so it's a challenge there. I also think the human capital and talent in the city is undeniable. We have doctors, we have lawyers, we have aerospace engineers, we have small business owners, we have blue collar workers who run great operations. And I want to see those voices, brought forward. We had a think tank this year, in the Redondo Beach Return to School think tank. I don't think it included a regular parent in a 2-parent house. It was always somebody with a letter after their name or a member of the PTA. We need to get those people involved. We also need to just make sure that we're driving value for our kids. It's time to be advocates for Redondo Beach School District, not anybody else.
Thank you. Question number 2. Schools need to balance the voices of all parties, but cannot violate educational codes nor county, state, and federal laws, despite any pressures from a parent majority. How would you manage this if elected to the school board? And we're starting with Ms. Ford Cole.
Thank you, Barbara. I think that every organization that I've been part of, I've had to build consensus, and I've had to deal with disagreement. And, my approach to that has always been to listen and to help people listen to others. And I think that's good in any situation like you're describing. But I think that, we're going to be elected to the school board, and we can only do the things that are in the power of the school board. We can advocate to others, to other branches of government and other areas of government. And I've been a very strong advocate, especially with the PTA. I've had a thorough training in advocacy, and I was able to go to Sacramento with the PTA and talk to legislators there about finding more funding for schools. So that would basically be my approach to that situation.
Thank you. Mr. Elder.
Right, thank you. So this is an issue I deal with a lot. I serve as chair of the Redondo Beach Planning Commission. I'm on my 2nd term now. And as anyone who lives in Redondo knows, land use can be very controversial. There's a lot of laws that are constantly being passed by the state that force different changes on us that we don't agree with, but it's something we have to work around as best as we can because we don't get to decide what those laws are. We can absolutely advocate for changing them, and that's something I would expect to do. But when it comes to the letter of the law and our power to override it, that's very limited. And it's very easy for the state or any other organization to make laws that directly affect us. And you see that right now with the pandemic. We're under the rules of LA County. And so we have to follow those rules. That doesn't mean we have to like them or agree with them, but those are the choices we have to make. And if we don't follow those, we can lose our funding, we can be shut down, we can lose our autonomy. So I realize that we often do have to make unpopular choices, but it's not necessarily because we want to, it's because we're required to. So I love to have those conversations and help inform people so they understand why. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Isaacs.
I think the way that you handle that is the way you handle any conflict that I've had to handle in my past. The first thing that you do is you listen and engage. You listen to what everyone is saying, you engage them, and then you provide them the information that this is what we're allowed to do, this is what we're capable of doing, and you come to some sort of a compromise, which is why it's important that we also collaborate with everyone in the community. And like I said, listen, engage them, allow them to have a voice, which is all a lot of times people want, is they just want to be heard. Even if they don't get exactly what they wanted, they just want to be heard. And so like I've heard earlier, I think listening is a really important part of any conflict. But ultimately, it's about communicating with the people in the community. It is not about, lecturing to them or making them feel their voice isn't worthy, but it's about making sure they understand the law.
Thank you. Ms. Silverman Nemeth.
So I feel like that's somewhat of a trick question. I am an attorney. I believe in following the law. Whatever those laws may be, it's not up to us to decide whether we're going to follow them or not. So starting from that standpoint, I also am an advocate, and I understand how difficult it can be when two people, for example, see the same thing and get a different answer. So I believe in problem solving and mediating and looking for solutions that may be outside our box and our comfort zone. But above all, again, I think we're role models for the children. And as those role models, it's our duty and obligation to stay within certain limits and show the kids how to think.
Thank you. Mr. Strutzenberg.
You have to start with a full understanding of those laws and regulations, not just the letter of the law and the regulations, but the nuance and the interpretations that happen with those. It's only when we understand it first that we can help explain it to other people. And I find that when you can really talk with someone with a good, solid basis of understanding yourself, people understand so much better, and you will build consensus with that. The parents, the teachers that are involved, everybody that I've talked with, once you get a clear knowledge of things, it's so much easier to pass that message on. And you have to tell the truth, not filtered, not opaque. It has to be transparent. You've got to lay it out. This is what it is. We've got to work with it from here. How can we do that?
Thank you. Ms. Trone.
Hi. So first of all, I would say we have to have empathy and we have to have compassion. There's a lot going on right now. And when the community voices their thoughts and concerns, I think as board members, we need to listen with compassion. We need to be able to understand where they're coming from, because everyone's coming from a different perspective. I have 3 children at home, so believe me, we always have a different perspective, and challenges as to what we want, even for dinner, let's say. So we do have to collaborate. We need to work together. We need to have clear communication, transparency. And as far as the law is concerned, I have a background in risk management with RBUSD. And
Excuse me, we can't hear you.
whoops, sorry. I thought, my mistake. Okay, can I start over or?
I think you need to just finish up. We only missed the last sentence.
Oh, okay. So, like I said, I believe that we need to have compassion and we need to have complete understanding where our community brings their concerns to us. It's important for us to be able to hear them.
Thank you. Mr. Arnold.
I echo the sentiments about empathy and listening and the ability to understand people's problems and pains and try to be a sounding board for them. But I also think we're at a place where we need straight talk. We need to be able to respectfully disagree. And we also need to know what we can do and can't do. I am not a lawyer, so I don't think I can speak to a vague question about legalese or laws implemented by the state or the county. But I do think we have lawyers, and I think we need to talk about that. But more to the point, I think we have to have the same conversation when the microphone is on in a Zoom like this as we do when the microphone's off. So if we have frustrations about the way the county's treating us as a school board, we need to voice those. We need to express those. I think it's fair for Dr. Keller and our principals and teachers to be really frustrated. That to me is natural. So I think we need to have utter transparency, and so much of the Redondo Beach politics seems to be mired in this underbelly of complexity that I don't think needs to be there. So that'd be my goal.
Thank you, Mr. Chang.
Hi, everyone. For 20 plus years as a licensed architect, this is all I've been doing, is playing and balancing the middle ground. I got my architecture degree from Harvard, and I'm licensed where I'm literally legally liable for some of the decisions that are made, not just at that moment, but for years afterwards. So I advocate for my clients and represent the city code in finding an effective path forward. That is how I would continue to balance the needs of the community, the needs of the school, and what is legally allowed and what could be legally capable. That's all I've been doing as a licensed architect. And I think I am very well poised on how to do that, from being diplomatic to being legal representative, to be an advocate and representative for the constituents at hand.
Thank you. Question number 3. What do you see as the relationship between the school district, school board, and the various school unions? And we're going to start with Mr. Elder.
Great, thank you. I think one of the things that makes Redondo Beach Schools so special is that we really are a team here. It's a partnership. And so while there are various interested parties, such as the various unions and parents and administrators and everyone else, at the end of the day, I think just about everyone is on the same page that the end goal is we're doing this for the kids. We want to provide them the best educational experience possible. So yes, priorities are not always going to be aligned, and that's something that's always going to be the case. But I think it's a very collaborative environment. And I think the thing that makes that so strong is that it's very open and transparent, and that we all work together. We don't get into these separate silos. So I think it's important to continue to maintain that relationship because you've seen what happens in other school districts when it does get contentious. So being able to work together towards that common goal and recognizing that we have differences along the way and that no one's going to come away completely happy, but we have to keep the focus on providing the best educational experience possible for our kids and keep everyone focused on that single goal above everything else. And I think that's how we maintain that team spirit. And thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Isaacs.
So yeah, I think that the most important thing is making sure that everyone is heard. I think it's very similar to the last question in terms of the way that you deal with any conflict is you make sure that everyone is heard, that they have the opportunity to voice their concerns, whatever they are. And our goal as a school board member is to listen. So if the district and the unions are having an issue, that we sit down with both of them individually, find out what the issues are, and have them come together and come up with a compromise. And I think that our goal is to make sure that everybody's relationships are running smoothly and we step in if we need to. But yes, it is important that they get along. It is important that they're working together. It is important that they keep everything focused on the children and the teachers and the staff.
Thank you, Ms. Silverman Nemeth.
Great. Well, to start with, I think the relationship between the school board and our teachers union, for example, is a really good relationship. As board members, we do not do the bargaining. That's not part of the job. Our job is to be supportive and to be there and to listen. We have Dr. Wesley, who, under Stephen Keller, who handles most of that. And, you know, one of my issues with the board, with the board and the unions, is I think it needs to be a little more transparent. Because as a parent, for example, I would have liked to known that that was a good relationship and not just take what you hear in the park for the truth of it, but to understand how the school board, the parents, the teachers, and everybody works together with the union for our district and for really what's best for our kids.
Thank you, Mr. Strutzenberg.
Yeah, I would start with the fact that both the school board and the unions have a lot of similarity. In each case, we're a collective voice. The school board is a collective voice for the 10,000 students and all of their parents, and even our community at large. Whereas the teachers and the staff are represented in a collective voice by their unions. So there's no perfect fit for a one-size-fits-all with this. And I've learned about this through my wife as a teacher. And this question kind of came up yesterday with the RBTA interviews, that I see the unions as a very effective collective voice for protecting the interest of teachers. And I think that's important, not only teachers, but staff, but other staff as well. And I told them honestly, I think that what we pay to be a part of the teachers union that my wife is in is a bargain for what we get out of that. It is a protective shield that comes into play when it needs to. And we need to listen to that.
Thank you, Ms. Trone.
Hi. So I worked for RBUSD, and so I know all board members are unique to their own school districts. In our particular school district, it's my understanding that there's always been a very harmonious relationship among the board members and also with the teachers union. And so I believe that's because there's been a lot of collaboration and communication. And first of all, we're always putting our children foremost. And so if we keep an eye on always wanting to do what's best for our children and protecting our teachers, I think that that is all our common goal. However, there are times where there will be disagreements. There will be times where we don't always agree. And when that happens, we all need to put our personal emotions aside and always do what's in the best interest of our students, of our teachers, and our community as a whole. Because at the end of the day, that's exactly what we want, is we want to provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arnold.
It's great to hear that we do have a great relationship between the unions and the school board. It's been my experience every time I've talked to somebody that's a teacher or a member of the staff or leadership that's been the case. So that being said, I do think it's a great example of how we as a school board can help and advocate, things like essential workers. I can't think of anybody more essential than teachers in this moment. Yet we're still kind of waiting in line for vaccines. We have no real great idea of how this can happen. Rolf, I applaud the proactive measures you took or are taking. So that's great. I'd love to piggyback on whatever you're doing. And at the same time, if there are challenges, and if we look at some of the expenses that come, whether it be pensions or benefits or wages, we have to be honest about it. Same thing. There's going to be disagreement. I know that I think I should make more money, and my boss thinks I should make probably less money. And those kinds of conversations happen in workplaces all around America. So that's just going to be my attitude. I just think it's be plain, be straightforward, be honest, but also understand that our job right now is to get these kids in school.
Thank you, Mr. Chang.
So this question is very similar to the prior one as my role as a licensed architect, where I'm always balancing the various constituents, including the planning board that might want to approve the project to my client and the community at large. I believe that there's multiple parties here, both the teachers union, the group of principals and administrators, the parents. So my MO is always listen, learn, then lead. So I want to listen to all the parties involved, learn about what can work, and then go forward and lead. That's how I would balance the various ways that the different parties can both work together and collaborate together.
Thank you. Ms. Ford Cole.
Hi. Yeah, I think that one of the strengths of Redondo Beach is the district is that the teachers and the classified staff all feel like they're part of one community with the parents and the kids. A lot of the teachers have their kids at our schools, which is a great strength. And then the harmonious relationships with the unions, both the teachers union and the union that represents classified staff, is really part of that strength. It's not an accident. It's because our district makes an effort to treat teachers and staff with great respect, and recognizes that 96% of everything that the district spends, they spend on human beings, and human beings is what makes a school district go. So it's very important to keep those relationships. And many districts outside of here, one of their big problems is getting highly qualified staff to come and work for them and retaining the highly qualified staff that they have.
Thank you. Question number 4. What are your thoughts as they relate to the school board, district faculty, and families on diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly as they pertain to social justice and racial equity? And we're starting with Ms. Isaacs.
You said, what are our thoughts?
The question is, what are your thoughts as
Okay.
they relate?
I got it. Thank you. I think that that's something that we need to work on. I think that that's why I am one of the main reasons why I'm running for school board. In my son's middle school, we created a diversity committee. They did not have one, and it was very successful. We had speakers that we brought in that taught the kids different things about different cultures and different histories, and it worked out great. When my son first started at the school, I recognized that there was not a diversity committee or anything of the sort. So I was working on that until COVID happened, and then all that went out the window. And then the students themselves came up with a petition saying they wanted more diversity in the curriculum, in the teaching staff, and in other authors and books and things that they read in other classes. They created their own petition. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been trying to do and work on at the school. And so that we created I didn't create, but the RBUSD created a race and equity committee to address all of these issues that were not being addressed.
Sorry, I'll start again. Ms. Silverman Nemeth.
I thought it was my turn. So I think it's important to first recognize that I am probably not what you would consider diverse, but I do believe that we need more diversity in our district and in our lives. And again, it's something that we model and we teach our kids. And I am most familiar with Mr. Brown, who is one of the vice principals at Redondo Union. And he told me a story last week that really stuck to me. And he said that as part of his committee on diversity and equity, which he's running at the high school, if one of the members came to him and said, I felt uncomfortable, this made me uncomfortable, then that's really what it's about. And I think that we need to put ourselves in those situations and our children in those situations.
Thank you. Mr. Strutzenberg.
So I've been on the other side of this where I was the outsider kind of. I went to school overseas for a year, and I thought the foundation of what I was hoping for was just not to be excluded from things. So that's what we build upon, is first just not excluding, and then we can work to higher levels. But I just didn't want to be excluded from things. I wanted to be allowed to be included, and then I'd work on it myself to be included. Something in my past that really changed my perspective on this is I did missions work overseas for a couple of years with a church in Africa and India. And I was at an orphanage in Africa once, and an 8-year-old boy was at my table that I was helping do some things. And we had to divide the paper in half. So he picked up the paper and he very carefully folded it in half so he could mark the point where it was exactly half, and he drew his line from there. And that made me see that kids are brilliant no matter what their background. Here's a kid that's in an orphanage in Kinshasa, Africa, in the Congo, and he did this and he got that, and that just completely changed my perspective on things. So it's a matter of giving everyone a chance. That's
Thank you, Ms. Trone.
Hi, so I'm a Latina woman. I am a daughter of immigrants, and I have racially diverse children. So diversity is a big, big thing for me. My philosophy on diversity is that we can learn from each other, and we can appreciate our differences, and we can value our common goals. And that's what makes us such a great community here in Redondo, because we are so diverse in so many different ways. I'm part of an organization called South Bay Equity Project, and also the Washington Diversity and Equity. And our goals are in line with the district's Race and Equity Committee, because we want to push that forward. We want to inform, we want to educate. I also founded a Dual Immersion Foundation, which promotes multicultural learning, because I believe in our community, and I believe that if we have more awareness, then we will understand each other better. And it's good for our children to be able to see that and be able to have, okay.
Mr. Arnold.
I think this is a great question and a great topic to tackle, and one that I need to do a lot of listening on. I do think the simple answers are probably the best ones. I think we're better together. I think our community is only richer the more perspectives we bring into it. I think our children, thankfully my children I know, don't see color, they don't see race when they talk about the friends they play with. But I also think it's important to kind of acknowledge that when you bring up terms like this, there are a lot of people that look like me, frankly, who might bristle internally and wonder if this is something that, excludes them or pushes back on their opportunity. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, no, it doesn't do that. It just raises the chances and levels the playing fields for everyone. And that's ultimately a good thing. So I'm here for any and all of this. It'll only make Redondo Beach and our school district better.
Thank you, Mr. Chang.
My entire life has been another perspective. I immigrated to the US. I transplanted to the West Coast from New Jersey, from the East Coast, and I'm a complete rookie to the political environment. So that allows me to see a new perspective on things that others take for granted. In this town, this city of 70,000 residents, we have 50,000 registered voters and 10,000 students, of which 40% of the residents are minorities, but 55% of the students are minorities. And yet, when you look at the various teachers, administrators, and board in the political offices, the representation doesn't quite match that gap between minorities and other ethnicities. And for diversity and inclusion to work, we have to strive so that there is a better representation across the board, because there are innate perspectives that unless you are that type of person, you will just never get.
Thank
And
you.
representation allows for the different voices to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ford Cole.
I've been advocating for inclusion for many years, since 2015, when I organized a conference called Making Inclusion Better in the South Bay. Most of the time, I'm talking about inclusion of students with significant disabilities. But inclusion means everybody. I would apply it to any student that might feel excluded. Inclusion is a process of change. It's not just accepting people, not just inviting them to the table, but changing the environment that we share so that they can participate, so that it accommodates their needs and everyone can belong. So we have to make space at the table for everyone to fully participate. I think that, you know, the Race and Equity Committee is a great move forward for the district. And they're looking at recruitment and staff training, and also curriculum and school climate. And I think recruitment is very important.
Thank you, Mr. Elder.
Yeah, so I absolutely think diversity and inclusion and equity are critical. You know, ultimately, we're all stronger when we're working together. And while I might not be the face of that, I think my role is to listen and to learn and to advocate, because it is so much better when we can appreciate and celebrate each other. And that's something I've seen. I've served on the PTA board for years now. One of my favorite events that we do every year is the International Night, where you get to see all the students and families in that community come together and celebrate their cultures and their identity. And you would never expect to see that much diversity until this one night when it's all just showcased. And it's tremendous. It's a great way for people to learn more about each other, because as we learn more about each other, there's really so much more you get to understand about someone and really appreciate all the different things they have to offer. So I think taking away, you know, some people, luckily, I don't think our community is much, but there is fear of different in some areas. And so by being exposed to that and making sure everyone's comfortable with it and celebrating it, I think that's a fantastic way to really build that community and celebrate that diversity that makes us so much stronger. So that's really, thank you.
Thank you. What are your thoughts on the RBUSD's policies for special education / special needs students? And would you suggest any changes? And we're starting with Ms. Silverman Nemeth.
I think that question actually, the answer changes depending on what level of schooling we're looking at and which specific policies. For example, at the high school, I know that we are trying to hire more teachers at this point and trying to put kids into more of a collaborative environment together instead of separating the kids. It all depends on what resources we have available to us, and I would want to make sure that those resources are there. One thing I love about our district is that we do offer inclusion for children with physical and all other sorts of needs. And, you know, my kids went to Lincoln, where we had special ed classes, and they truly benefited from that. So I would want to see that keep expanding.
Thank you, Mr. Strutzenberg.
Yeah, this one hits really close to home with me. My wife is a early intervention special needs teacher. Specifically, she works with orthopedic impairment and multiple disability, some of the tougher cases, I guess you could say. And I see what she does and the impact that she has on the lives of those kids. It goes on throughout their entire life. And along with that, it's the impact she has with their parents, because being a parent, when you're first a parent of a special needs child, you weren't expecting that. You don't know what it's about. You don't know what to do. They're scared, I think. And she helps them adapt and learn. We need to treat not only the kids, but help the parents too. I love the new Friendship Center that's being proposed and is going in up at the Franklin site. I think that's huge for moving this whole thing forward and treating special needs people throughout their life and preparing them for meaningful positions in society, which they can do. But we can do a lot more, and I would fully support it.
Thank you, Ms. Trone.
Hi, so I actually have a child with an IEP, and it's a tough process. First of all, the process of just identifying and having the IEP put in place can be challenging. And it's one of the things where sometimes parents are not aware of the process, they don't understand, and a lot of times it's difficult to implement. However, I've had a really great experience with our district. Our teachers have been really great in being able to implement those different interventions, and they've been very forthcoming with my family. However, I know that it's not the case for all families. Therefore, I would suggest that more clear communication steps in being able to obtain those services. I think that it's important to have the collaboration between the teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold.
I can only speak kind of from a wider perspective on this, because candidly, I am not up to speed on everything that the school district offers, but would look forward to digging into that. I can speak specifically to having a first grader or a kid that was in kindergarten and learning to read and going into first grade during a pandemic, and having a child with some developmental challenges and some backsliding on behavioral episodes and things like that. And the first place I thought to reach out to was our school principal and our support system there. And I think that's going to be the case, because I have family with special needs, and I can tell you it doesn't end at grade school or high school. It's a constant issue, and it's something that, is part of our duty to support. So on a general sense, yeah, I think this is a key piece of our community and something that we need to do better at all times. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chang.
Hi, like I said before, my MO is to listen, learn, and lead, including topics where I don't know as much as the next person. As I'd said, the district is filled with professionals, but as a board member, I represent the parents as well. For me, diversity and equity inclusion transcends skin color, transcends gender. It includes those who have special needs or those who may have special requests. And so by listening and understanding what they need, I help make the plans happen. I know that there are special programs already such as student success teams and RTIs in order to enable a wider audience of students to be able to succeed. But in this case, I would listen more into the parents and the professionals on how to enable all students to be able to succeed.
Thank you, Ms. Fortico.
Thank you. Well, as the mother of a child with Down syndrome in 9th grade, who's not scared and does understand his disability and does understand special education, I have to say that there's a great deal that can be done to improve special education in Redondo Beach. I've had wonderful service from all of the classified staff and the teachers. They've been so kind and fantastic. But the system in the district is very difficult to negotiate for parents with special needs, parents with children with special needs. I've become an advocate in the district for that reason. There's a great deal of research that shows that there are more effective practices. For example, students with dyslexia, they need evidence-based programs, and we need a large number of teachers, including general education teachers, to be trained in those programs. Students with cognitive disabilities, they do best if they are included in the general education classroom.
Thank you. Mr. Elder.
Thank you. One of the things I've always seen as either a room parent or watchdogs, whenever I'm in the classroom at the elementary level, I've really seen the benefit of bringing SDC into the classroom and mixing neurotypical with neuroatypical and really getting the kids to mingle and work together because I think it goes back to diversity. There's a lot of different types of diversity, and this is just one of them. But when you understand that different isn't bad or scary or anything else, it's just different, it becomes normal. And I think that's an important form of acceptance, and it's a way we can absolutely help with that. But we also need so much more than that. And I think one of the critical problems is the question of funding. And so there's a lot of additional ways we could be pursuing funding, potentially from grants to other efforts, but it really comes down to getting the resources to provide to our neediest population, of which I see this being one of them. And because it does, we need a lot more effort here. And so it's really, how do we find that extra funding to go the extra mile and really make sure these programs are successful, and that these kids can be successful and their families can be successful, and that we're giving them, again, the same chance to thrive as every other child in Redondo Beach. Because it's, again, we're there to represent everyone in the district, not just our kids, not just the kids that we know. We're there to represent everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Isaacs.
I have a child that has mild ADHD, and we have gotten nothing but amazing support from the high school. They developed a plan for him. They've and I can't speak for how everyone's experience, but I do have a friend who has a child who has more severe disabilities, and it was extremely difficult in terms of the paperwork and getting everything figured out. And I think that I agree with Margot. I think that we need to have more education so that the parents know what is available for their child. And there's so many great resources, and if they aren't aware of them, then they're missing out on an excellent education, an important part of the educational system that they need. I think that, when I brought up diversity, equity, and inclusion, I also meant children with disabilities, children that learn differently, because kids don't always learn in the same way. And
Thank
we should address
you.
that.
What are your thoughts to address the increased needs for socio-emotional wellness for our students, staff, and faculty as we emerge from the immediate crisis of the pandemic? Mrs. Strutzenberg.
Sorry, I lost screen there for a second. I'm coming back now. All right. Yeah, it's definitely something we've got to handle, and ensuring that our children are positively supported, not only when we come back, but even now during distance learning, and providing both physical and emotional reviews. And it may mean expanding our counseling staff and maybe some training even possibly for certain of our teacher staff to be able to recognize better what they're seeing with the kids and see potential things that maybe you might not see without the additional eyes or training to do that. But we definitely need to be looking to that, not only now, but definitely in the future. And it may be a dynamic situation for quite a while as we reintegrate back into the schools. And it may be a different situation from what it ever was. And we'll just have to be cognizant of that and make sure that we're addressing, and we got to be very adaptive and agile to be able to handle what we're seeing. And again, it comes back to the communication with the teachers. What are they seeing? Because they're the ones that are really going to see it, and the ones we need to be listening to.
Thank you, Ms. Trone.
Hi, I think it's really important. That's one of my key priorities. It's going to be a hard transition for everybody. Our kiddos have not been in a classroom on school site for close to a year. So they're going to need a lot of support in transitioning. They're going to need a lot of support and understanding, because behaviorally they might not be ready to learn. Some of them are going to be excited to just be back. So it's going to be a lot of transition. We need to support our teachers. We need to be able to give them the resources that they need in order to be able to do that. And we also need to be able to support our teaching staff as well as our administrators, because we're all coming back from a very difficult time, and everyone's processing very differently, very individually. Some families are not ready to return back to school. Some of them are. So we just need to be able to support them, provide them the proper resources, and also, just have a little bit of empathy.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold.
Yeah, I'm an optimist by nature, but this question strikes me as incredibly important and probably the biggest challenge we have. I think we have a ton of issues moving forward, and I think we need to put as much support as it's going to take and resources, and if that's advocating for more, if it's coming from the state level or the Fed level or for wherever, honestly, from private businesses and donations, this is a huge issue for all of us. I mean, I think it's also important that we kind of acknowledge some of the mistakes we've made. One of the big things that's driving me to run, and one of the things that drives me nuts, frankly, is, we can be putting kids back in the classroom now, but, just looking at the numbers and knowing where we are, we should have been doing this months ago. And I know it's not anybody's fault. I know we're all going through our first pandemic together, but this has been a trauma for kids. It's been a trauma for families and for parents, and from information overload. And I think we need to get back to a really easy data set and support people as much as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chang.
We have a tough road ahead, but the way I see it is no one can predict anything. As if the pandemic has taught us anything, it is that the glass is not half full or half empty. It is just half. We're going to measure where we are. We're going to assess and then figure out what to do next. And that may take several months. That may take several years. The social and emotional support is incalculable. And like our pandemic today, we have to work together as a community. That means pulling in resources and working together with not just the school and its surrounding community, but also the greater community, such as the Beach Cities Health District. And so we have to just be prepared to collaborate even further for a much longer road of mental health, which is something that we've really never addressed. So let's not assume the worst, but let's not be so optimistic. Let's just take it as half the way it is. We measure, assess, and then act. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Ford Cole.
Thank you. I'm very worried about the children's emotional and social development. The effect of not playing with other kids, especially the children who don't have siblings and may have been at home isolated for a year. The teens where their self-esteem is really based on their social interactions. We have to start addressing it now in distance learning. We need more opportunities for the kids to interact without grown-ups as mediators. I see it happening in elementary schools, but not so much in the high school. There's two separate things. The social emotional learning, which is basically teaching the kids about how to regulate their emotions and plan and set goals. It's great that the district is starting to bring that forward. I think it's more done at elementary, and you need more of a plan that it's consistently done in the secondary schools. The other thing is mental health. It's very important that we use methods that are proven to be effective to deal with mental health. We need to have a better job of identifying which kids are in trouble, because it's not always the ones that we think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elder.
I think one of the pieces that's been so devastating from the pandemic is that it has hit everyone so differently. Some people have weathered it fairly well, but some are really suffering. Learning loss is the obvious one, but there's a lot of social and emotional loss. And you look at kids and families who are suffering from financial insecurity or food insecurity, or families that have lost loved ones. So this is absolutely a huge issue. And it's something we're talking about on both the school site councils I serve on, is how do we really identify where everyone's at, because no one's been through anything like this before. We don't have a plan for how to get out of it. We don't know how long that takes, and each situation is going to be so unique. So I think one of the important first steps is to identify where everyone's at. And I know Beach Cities Health District is working with the school district in collaboration to identify where students are, how they're doing. And I think that's a critical first step, because we need to make data-driven decisions and we don't have data. So getting that data first, which is of course going to change like everything else, but it gives us a starting point to really find what resources we need to assign, and then identify how we're going to pay for that. What additional resources can we bring to bear? how can we get additional grants or other funding so that we can bring in additional counseling or focus intervention efforts or look at modified school hours and additional school hours, or thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Isaacs.
Yeah, this is really hard. As other people have said, some children have been handling it differently. My kid has been really easygoing about it and he's been doing great, but other kids are depressed and having a hard time. I think that we need to handle this with grace and have resources available. Definitely mental health is going to be a huge issue. We need to have empathy in terms of our grading and make sure these children understand that we are there for them. And same for the teachers and the administrators. I agree. Everyone has gone through it in a different way. And we need to make sure that we have resources available, mental health resources available to help everyone deal with this transition. And we need to be careful and helpful and make sure that we are understanding if a child acts out or if somebody's grades aren't what they were before. It's huge changes have happened for our children, and we need to really be understanding as a district and make sure that we have extra resources available to help them process everything that's happening, everything that has happened, and what's going to be new instruction. It's going to be different. They're going to have to be cleaner. They're going to have to wear masks. They're going to have to wash their hands. All of that are going to be changes for them. And we have to make sure that we are handling it in a way with grace and, like I said, empathy.
Thank you. Ms. Silverman Nemeth.
So I think that there's no question that this is going to be the biggest issue hitting this district in the next year and probably following years, is the learning loss mitigation and the social emotional welfare of our kids. So specifically for this question, I think it's going to be a challenge. We're going to need to identify the children that are having issues. And that's the first part of this, is to make sure we have ways to identify the kids from the high school down to elementary, and that's going to be different. And I know our administration is already looking into the research and trying to figure out what tools to use. But I also really think we need to support our teachers and understand that a lot of our teachers may also have anxiety and mental health issues from the pandemic, and we need to be able to offer them services as well.
Thank you. Question number 7. What kinds of assistance, oversight, and resources do you believe will be needed to reopen schools? And we're starting with Ms. Trone.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I had my child popped in really
Not
fast.
a problem. What kinds of assistance, oversight, and resources do you believe will be needed to reopen schools?
Okay. Wow, a lot. In order to reopen schools, first of all, we need to make sure that we're compliant with OSHA requirements in order to keep our staff safe. That's going to require that we ensure cleanliness and sanitation, and also have the proper teacher to student ratios. We also need to instruct our children in order to make sure that they follow the proper protocols as well, and also as far as families to ensure that they also follow the protocols as well. I believe it can be done. I believe we can reopen. I believe that, if we put our children first, I think that we are capable of doing that and we can bring them back safely. I'm excited to share that, with K through 2nd opening this week, my daughter's returning.
Thank you. Mr. Arnold.
You mentioned assistance, oversight, and resources, and we need all of it and as much of it as possible. I mean, it shouldn't be hard to get your teachers vaccinated. It shouldn't be hard to get anybody vaccinated. I am now in day 4 of awaiting, or day 5 rather, of waiting for a COVID test back for my daughter because we're trying to be good citizens. Even though I'm 99.9% sure she doesn't have it. She had a sore throat on Friday, and that's a symptom. I think we need better, PPE, and we also need to acknowledge the fact that our schools are too small. We need more space. We need more resources, and that takes money, and that takes building initiatives and all the things that people complain about. But as we've seen this year, we were investigating a mall to house students. My daughter's at the adult school on Inglewood and Manhattan Beach Boulevard. We need to open our eyes and figure out how to do this because this is our city and these are our kids, and we spend enough money. I think we just need to spend it better, and we need to get more funds allocated to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chang.
Hi, for reopening schools successfully and sustainably for a long period of time, I'd like to see more science. I'd like to see more resources back in that science. For example, regular testing for everyone who's going to be on site, whether you're symptomatic or asymptomatic, because we cannot assume that. Nearly 50% of kids and adults are the sources of spread because they're asymptomatic. We're only testing once they show symptoms, and that's not going to be enough. But like I said about collaboration, I want the school district to coordinate and collaborate with the city to set standards that are even higher than the LA County Health. We can work with our own Beach Cities Health District to establish those standards. And one example would be clarifying the priorities of what is essential. Schools are essential. If the community agrees on that, it is essential. We will prioritize that over certain indoor activities in businesses and other social areas so that we can prioritize schools getting back into the kids getting back into school and staying there healthily,
Thank you.
safely.
Ms. Ford Cole.
Thank you. Well, we all want the children to be back on campus. We all agree that that's the best place for the children. But the teachers are going to need a lot of support for the hybrid program, which it sounds very difficult to teach both at home and at school at the same time. And the kids are going to still need support in the distance learning that's still going to be part of that. And even if we did get back to school full time, there's still going to be children and maybe teachers as well who have to be isolated at home at some points. And so distance learning is going to be part of our school system for a little while. For that, we're going to need a lot of resources. We're going to need oversight to check that the rules are being followed, that the school safety protocols are absolutely followed to the letter. And also to resources for testing. The best thing is the vaccine, of course, but
Sorry about that, Mr. Elder.
Sure. So the one good thing is we know from the data we have on our own child development centers, which have been open since last summer, along with the recent data from the Center for Disease Control, that schools can be made relatively safe. They're obviously not perfectly safe, but they can be made much safer. It's a matter of how do we scale it up. So there's a lot of creative solutions out there. One of the things we just did on School Site Council was we looked at purchasing trays for students to use outdoors so they could be outside the classroom. It's a much lower risk environment. And there's a lot of things like that we can do that just require a little outside the box thinking. But one of the really important things I think we need to recognize, and I think every parent recognizes, is teachers are essential workers. They are very essential. And so we need to get their vaccinations accelerated. And I think everyone in here should be advocating for that. And I appreciate those who are. I know I've reached out to elected officials, and I encourage everyone else to do that as well, because teachers are going to be a lot safer once we can get them vaccinated. And I think as a community as a whole, we also need to be more responsible and be safer and follow guidelines like wearing masks and socially distancing so that we can keep the community rate of infection low so that our classrooms can be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Isaacs.
I think that as I was speaking about previously, we're going to need to have mental health services on campus available. I think that we're going to need, as with all the new procedures, that that have been instituted for COVID, the masks, the 6 feet distance. We're going to need to make sure the school, everything is set up with the appropriate signage. We're going to need maybe have the janitorial staff work longer hours or different hours in order to make sure that every surface is cleaned in whatever frequency that is necessary in order for it to be safe. We're going to need definitely oversight. We're going to need, I don't know if it would be, we would need a new position, but someone we will need to be in charge of making sure that all of these rules are followed and nobody is even in a position to potentially get sick. I think we should have a class on that every child should take that will discuss all these procedures.
Thank you, Ms. Silverman Nemeth.
So this is one of those questions that actually keeps me up at night, and something I've put a lot of thought into. If you start to think about everything that has to happen in order for our kids to get back to school and for us to get back to some sort of normalcy, for example, just in the high school, how do we have the different classes when freshmen and sophomore and juniors might be in the same class, but we can't stagger it by grade? All of these things, it makes your head explode. Which is why I'm thankful I'm not in charge of it, and Dr. Keller is, and I believe he has a plan. In terms of the assistance and the resources, we have the best parents of any school district, and I believe all hands on deck. I believe our parents will be there to help support the teachers and staff and do whatever needs to be done in order to provide the support.
Thank you, Mr. Strutzenberg.
First and foremost, we absolutely need the support and compliance of our community. All the great things we do in our schools, and I think the teachers and staff are very on board with doing all of that. All of that becomes moot if we still have community spread and our schools are simply a vector. And I don't want our schools to be blamed for that when they're really not the source. So we really need our community to come together and do everything that's needed to be done to keep the spread down. And I'd love that I've seen much more compliance of mask wearing when people are out. I see it all the time. I walked down to Toledo Monday morning when they were doing their first opening just to see how it went. And parents were very respectful. The thing that surprised me, I wanted to stop and take pictures, which was awesome. But the parents were compliant, and I think the teachers did an awesome job, and the staff that was there to organize everything. So we need our community. The second thing we need is quick reactions when things change. Stopping there.
Thank you. And now it's time for the closing statements. And we will do that in reverse order. And each candidate, you have 1 minute, starting with Ms. Trone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to share a little bit about myself and my platform. I do want to add just a couple more things. I will say that I will hit the ground running because I have LAUSD background in procurement and risk management. I will continue to advocate for our kiddos as I did as I've been doing. I believe in co-constructive problem solving with all stakeholders. I'm a doer, as you can see from my involvement with South Bay Equity Project, with the Washington Diversity and Equity Committee, and also with the foundation that I began, the Dual Immersion Foundation. I am a well-rounded candidate. I'm endorsed by city leaders, educators, and community groups. Lastly, I'm really excited to bring fresh, new perspectives to our school district, and I humbly ask for your trust and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strutzenberg.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap it up with just thanking the League of Women Voters for putting this together. I think this was really important, and working together with the council PTA. And I want to thank all the other candidates. To have 8 candidates running for 3 positions is absolutely awesome. I congratulate all of you for diving into this. This is not an easy thing to do. You're learning that. 8 years ago, when the 3 board members got on that are terming out now, nobody ran against them. They were just given the slots. And what we're seeing now is the interest level so much higher, and that's fantastic. And thank you to each of you for getting to this level of involvement and this much willingness to take this on. This is a big challenge. And I want to wrap it up with an absolute thank you to our teachers and the staff at school too, but especially our teachers, seeing how they have persevered through this and adapted and learned new things. It is absolutely awesome. I see my wife going through it. She has never been so mentally or physically exhausted, but she just keeps right on going because of the difference she knows she's making. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Silverman Nemeth.
So I'm running for school board because I love the Redondo Beach School District. I can't tell you how much I love it and how much I have appreciated what has been given to my own children. I have developed relationships with parents and teachers and staff throughout the years, from when I used to make photocopies and help fix the Xerox machine at the elementary school, to being on the PTA and executive positions, and then onto school site councils. And I really value that work and look forward to continuing it. I have no preconceived ideas, and I'm not a one issue candidate. I want what's best for our schools, and I want to keep the Redondo Beach School District the best.
Thank you, Ms. Isaacs.
Thank you so much for this platform for all of us. This has been amazing. Just want to say really quickly that our children deserve an excellent education and schools that are safe and that value diversity. We have to remember that our kids are watching us. They are watching us. We are their example. Not what we say, but what we do. I'm going to tell you a quick story about when we were canvassing last weekend, and my girlfriend brought her daughter, who's 11. And she was just kind of going with her mom and seeing her mom talk about me and how great I am. And they went to the next house, and the little girl walked up to the steps before her mom could even say anything, knocked on the door, and very quietly, and she was clearly nervous, was telling her how great I am in the community, and telling the family, and they were enthralled and supportive and like, oh, you're doing great. And this scared little girl had just watched her mom, and she was scared to do it, but she did it anyway. And that's what I want for our kids, to watch us and to do it anyway.
Thank you. Mr. Elder.
Great. Thank you everyone again for organizing this. It's a fantastic venue. I'd just like to say that I've been dedicated to our school community for many years. I will continue to be so. And I think one of the things everyone's heard tonight is that we have need for a tremendous amount of resources. There's a lot of work we need to do, and there's a lot of things we want to do. And one of the things that really concerns me is the district funding as it is, because we've already been dipping into the reserves prior to the pandemic. So for example, as the bond oversight chair for the past 4 years, we look at our bond, which has less than 10% of the funding remaining. And so we're already getting financially squeezed. And while this next year doesn't look too bad, the years after that, we know financially the state is going to be in a bad situation from the pandemic. So funding is going to potentially be down. So there's a lot of things that we want to do, and there's a lot of things that we need to do. And it's really important that we are able to work together to find how do we fund it, because ultimately it doesn't matter what good ideas we have if there's no way to pay for them. There's no way to do them if we can't do that. So hopefully you'll support me because I think I have that experience in working with all the various parties to achieve that and find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ford Cole.
Thank you. As an educator, an advocate, and as a leader, I feel uniquely prepared to be a board member. I'll ensure that the board is fiscally responsible and able to weather economic uncertainty. Almost a third of all expenses in RBUSD, about $30 million, are spent on special education. $20 million of that comes directly from the general fund, not from special education funds. And yet, when we look at special education outcomes, the dashboard is an alarming orange. We can spend this money better, and we can have better outcomes and equity for all the students. I've studied our education system because I want Redondo to be a model of inclusive education in all senses of the word. I think it fits with who we are as a community. I've lived in many places in the world, but I find Redondo the most welcoming and most kind, and I think our schools can be also. I think there's a quote that sums it up. So many hands build a home, so many hearts build a school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chang.
Thanks, PTA and League of Women Voters for participating, for running this, and for everyone out there who is still attending this down to the last minute. Collaboration is key to our vibrant community. I will collaborate with the greater community, not just within the school district, but across to the small businesses to promote them and to help activate and improve our neighborhood programs. We have learned particularly well in this pandemic, our community is only as good as our schools, and our schools are only as good as our many neighborhoods. If you're a parent, I get you. If you're a small business owner, I get you. If you are a minority, I get you. If you are a teacher, I get you. So please visit my website, 321vote.us. A vote for me is a vote for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arnold.
Thanks, everybody, both in the Zoom and watching. I guess I would just wrap up with reminding people I don't have a political background. As I know, this is not a paying position. It's something that I'm doing because I think it's important. It's something I'm doing because I think our families need it and our kids need it. And I think about the memories that have been lost in the last year. Look, I know it's important to be safe. I know safety is the utmost importance. Our preschool lost an infant care teacher who took care of my son in the first year of his life a month ago. So the pandemic is real. The deaths are real. At the same time, the losses we've suffered this last year for our kids are real. And we need to find a way to get them all into school. And we need to find a way to kind of build back the force that we can bring together and really start understanding what happens on these boards and what we can do to make changes. So I'm not coming in with any answers. I'm coming in with open ears and a clear-eyed perspective, and I'd love to be on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. For your information, everybody, ballots were mailed on February 1st. The election is on February 2nd. There are 3 positions. Candidates, if you have not done so yet, add your information to votersedge.org/CA, and voters go to votersedge.org/CA for the candidates, for information on the candidates. On behalf of the PTA Council and the League of Women Voters of the Beach Cities, I want to thank the candidates for running to serve this community, and thank you also for participating in this forum.
Thank you, Barbara. What an informative evening. Before we wrap it up, I'd like to ask everyone, if you're not already a member, to please consider joining RBPTA. Our strength is in our numbers. Every membership counts, and membership information is on our website at rbpta.org. And finally, a big thank you to all of you, all of our participants. Please show your faces. Is everybody out? Can I see everybody? Awesome, awesome. So I want to start by thanking the League of Women Voters, especially our moderator, Barbara Arlo. Thank you so much. You did a phenomenal job. I want to thank the RBPTA board that helped put this production together. We are not professional, but I think we are now. So legislative chairs, Melissa DeChant and Deborah Coven, can you give us a wave? And finally, our VP of Programs, Patty DeLeva, thank you so much. And her friend Ginger Williams got us through this whole event. And I'm so happy that we were able to do this. And of course, thank you, candidates. We appreciate you sharing your vision of our school district, and good luck in the upcoming election. And lastly, to the audience, thank you for taking the time out for this evening for our kids to hear what these candidates had to say. And guys, have a great night and a beautiful week. Thank you.